Hi, I'm Mel Van Dusen. Welcome to the show. Our guest today is Marie Holmes, and Marie is a nature environment intuitive, and she's also a pioneer in the area of helping people relate to and even communicate with nature. And Marie has written this book. It's Earth Spirit Living, Bringing Heaven and Nature into Your Home. So, Marie, welcome.
It's nice to be here.
It's good to have you here. Now, Marie, what is an Earth environment intuitive?
Well, it's a phrase that I put together because I am finding that after 20 years of really working with environment and in consulting with clients and teaching, that nature had and has a lot to say when I am working with the built environment. Mm-hmm. And so I have practiced feng shui for many years, but I also wanted to include the earth. So I named it as calling myself an earth intuitive. In other words, when I walk on a site, I find that nature has a lot to say before I even go into the house. Mm-hmm. And the way nature connects is through the senses. So I'm watching for clouds, I'm watching for birds, mm-hmm. I'm looking at what's happening in the trees, and there's a whole sensory in-depth connection that is very simple, and it's something we all have, but I've focused on it for a long time, so it's very strong.
Right. Now there are several things that really keyed your interest in this subject, and one I think was a dream about an Indian woman and a broken bowl. Another one was your experience at Findhorn, a community in Scotland, and then another one was your interest in studying feng shui. So let's go through these. Tell us about the dream.
The dream was very evocative. It was at a time when we first moved to our land, and the purpose of moving to this land in Oregon, 5 acres, mm-hmm. was to build from the ground up, mm-hmm. practicing all my research I've done over the years, as I call it, mm-hmm. studying feng shui, and really taking what I gleaned from the Findhorn community, which is a place that really emphasizes the role of nature, mm-hmm. and the whole idea that there is an exchange, that you can feel her, you can get a sense of a message. So as I was starting the whole process, I also had a prior dream to that told me to stop everything and just be on the land. Mm-hmm. So I did do that for a period of time. And midway through this retreat of sorts, mm-hmm. that my husband was going, this is interesting, I didn't know you'd be doing that, I had this dream. And the dream was an image and an experience of a very old Native American woman who was crying over a broken bowl. And I zeroed in and felt her and listened to her. She was in total grief because the tribes, her tribe was being taken, they were not being able to live like they had always been. Mm-hmm. And there was a whole sense that the covenant with nature that she had been the spokesperson for in this tribe, this covenant with nature was being broken. And her grief was so overwhelming that she felt very numb. And as that started to happen, I realized that I was that woman. Mm-hmm. And the grief that I was feeling was also a level of feeling that I had not been able to connect with in my work with clients, and that I needed to feel this feeling. And as I did, and realize that many of us, most of us, have been disconnected from the earth for a long, long time. And she is the context we live in. She is where we all come from. And there's a whole sense of partnership that we have felt disconnected from. So in this dream, as I re-experienced that, the grief was there, but then I heard the words that these times are different, that people are coming together again, bit by bit, to really be connected more with the earth, allow her to be a part of our everyday life.
How do people become so disconnected, so ungrounded from what is so basic?
That's been my research, is to find out why that happened. It's really been, it's been in the last 200 years when we had the Industrial Revolution, and there was an emphasis on the mind, and we no longer needed to be so close to the earth because we weren't as dependent on her. And then with the emphasis on the mind and really developing this whole left brain, we found out that we didn't have to be so connected with her day by day. And also, I think there was a real emphasis with religion in some areas of universities, etc., that was saying, and science as well, was saying we need to prove all these things. And that connection with the earth, as the indigenous people will tell us, is spontaneous sometimes. It's an experience. It's not something you explain. And as Albert Einstein, who I thought was a very interesting person as a scientist, said, that he felt the most important component in science was the area of mystery. And that, I think, is also what the earth is suggesting to us, to allow a whole sense of experience in there that doesn't have a lot of language. And we got away from that. And in these intense times of change that we're living in, that are so overwhelming with sometimes obstacles that we feel we can't even step into, if you allow yourself to reconnect with nature and get a sense of just breathing and being with your senses, a lot of times solutions come up that have never occurred to you before.
The cover of your book, Earth Spirit Living, it's a beautiful book, and it has a picture here of a room. And I just recently found out that this is the sanctuary at Findhorn. Could you tell us about Findhorn? I understand they have fantastic luck growing huge vegetables and plants. Tell us briefly about your 2 years there.
I was 2 years there. Yes, Findhorn, that's how I got there. I heard about their 40-pound cabbages. And Findhorn was based on the idea that there is an essence to nature. One of the people there, Dorothy McLean, called this essence the Deva. I describe it in a way as a DNA and a vitality in a plant that has a sense of exchange. And as a kid, I was talking to flowers a lot, and here was a place that said it's absolutely normal. So I went to live there, and I found that indeed this area, this place that focused so much on exploring that side of your personality and your being, was helping me open up to a stronger way. And I also, at that time, had a whole sense of that the buildings, that our built environment has a vitality that we need to explore and to exchange with and to help with circulation. So this building is a building that's dedicated to nature. It's called the Nature Sanctuary, and it is built right in the earth. It looks like a little hobbit house to me. It has one of those rounded doors. And the person who built it spent many, many hours connecting with nature as he was building, and really putting the intention that this would be a sanctuary for nature as well as for humans. So there's buildings for humans and nature there.
When you communicate with nature and nature communicates with you, what is that like? Can you give us a hint what's that like for people who are apparently totally out of touch with nature now?
Well, I think it might come as a surprise. It's pretty simple. Basically, it's sitting and asking to connect with nature. It's much like when you want to really listen to music, you turn on the tape recorder or the radio, and you focus your intention to really listen to music. That's the first step, is you just say, I want to really be connected with nature. The next thing that happens is that a wave of feeling will come over you, and especially a wave of joy for no explained reason. You will just feel connected to a sense of this joy. And joy is partly a way that vitality is expressed. You know, similar to like perhaps after you've taken a walk, you feel better because you're getting air exchange and you're moving your body. Sitting with nature is absorbing and inhaling the atmosphere. The Hawaiians call it the atmosphere around us, and that's nature, and it allows you to connect.
But in the world we live in today, especially here in Silicon Valley, where people work too much and they get burned out too fast, the joy of nature has to be put aside, and I would think a lot of these high-tech people are in a lot of pain. Can you talk about that?
Yes. I think it's a belief that they, like what you just stated, that they feel that they have to put nature aside. They have no time for nature. In reality, it should be the opposite. if they could realize that if they connected with nature, it's a foundation, and it is a way that they can cope. The reason we are so filled with stress is we take very little time to be with our body. And there is a wonderful book that's just come out that has a name for it now. It's called The Nature Deficit Disorder.
Oh.
And it's suggesting just what you were mentioning, that with all the stress in our lives, we need to really pay attention to what those factors are. And this particular researcher started with children, and especially children that are having a hard time focusing and studying in school. And he started questioning them about their experience in nature. And for the most part, they just had no clue. My favorite answer to one of his questions to a young boy was, his question to the boy was, how do you experience the inside, and how do you experience the outside, and which do you like better? He very quickly said, the inside, of course. There's no plugs outside. There are no plugs. So it's true, we are not embedded in nature. It's something that we visit perhaps on an occasional hike. And so we have forgotten how wonderful it feels. And it's important for the stress level for people to get back in nature.
I know when the tsunami hit almost 3 years ago, that it was noticed the animals, were just, all of a sudden something clicked between them, and they decided to move away from the shore to higher ground. And meanwhile, people went about their business because they were involved in preparing for retirement and making a living and all the other stuff and thinking about whatever. And, so, but there were some tribes who were in touch with what the animals were in touch with, and they moved toward the hills.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it was surprising for the people who were checking on survivors. They decided they should go check on this tribe. They were actually, their island, they lived on a separate island, not on the main shore. Mm-hmm. And their island was in the center of this hurricane, so they thought for sure these folks were gone. Mm-hmm. And as the helicopter arrived, all 200, the whole tribe, were waving at the helicopter saying, what are you doing here? And when they were able to discuss with them how they survived, they said it was very simple. We read the signs. We observed that the waves were going out. We also did have a whole, as we call it in Hawaii now, I've just moved there, a talk story. We had a whole sense of lineage from our ancestors to be aware of watching nature and not to pay attention to your immediate affairs, but to pay attention to the larger affairs. And so they observed the wave going out, and they went and saved themselves.
Yeah. Now, you've also studied feng shui, which you say is a balance between logical and intangible aspects of life. But your approach to feng shui is refreshingly different. Many of the books I've read on feng shui, it seems kind of formulaic. But what I noticed with you in the book and in the talks that I've seen you give is that you seem to go back toward the origin of feng shui and actually connect with nature so that you can better understand why the rules of feng shui have been originated. Talk to us a bit about your unique difference.
I find that the first books on feng shui were applying or pulling in our Western mind. So all the rules and the descriptions were important to kind of tug at people. And this is the second wave, because I found that in addition to give principles, you also...
But you are the leader of the second wave.
I am the leader of the wave. Thank you, yes I am.
Okay.
Thank you, I am.
Begin.
I thank you to just help that wave, that trend begin. Yes, what I found and felt is that there needed to be more language and more information out about how to really connect with this natural side of ourselves, and to give exercises and stories to help people really get the sense that it's very normal and natural to start with nature rather than the principles. Mm-hmm. That if you work on your instrument, your body, your being, you can intuit and figure out what to do. You don't always need all the principles. It's more that you feel what's right.
Mm-hmm. You also write in your book that imagination and sensitivity are often trivialized, yet both are needed to understand what you call nature beings. This business of imagination interests me. How do we know if our imagination is telling us the truth?
And that I love too, because many people feel that you have to kind of analyze your imagination. And I was able to hear stories from some African elders, and they, coming from their whole earth-oriented existence in life, laugh at us when we ask to explain our imagination. Their suggestion and their feeling is that everything you feel is real. If you're feeling it, there is an actuality to it. The challenge is how to interpret it. There's an example, I was in touch with a friend who is living in Minneapolis, and just yesterday their bridge collapsed, and I asked her how she was, and she said, "We're fine, but I want to tell you something." She said, "The night before this happened, I heard creaking noises and didn't know where they were coming from, but couldn't find the source. And then that night I had a dream that a bridge fell." So she had had a whole intuitive insight that I think is very normal for us in these times, and yet she didn't know how to apply it. It's like it was too much outside of her reality to think about a bridge falling close by. But we are getting those signals all the time. And she felt that maybe she was making it up, but in reality she found how truthful it was.
Also in your book, you say that nature beings operate in a sphere beyond the comprehension of physics, and the result of working with these nature beings can seem miraculous. But yet at the same time, shamans connect with this hidden world and are valuable to the tribe because they are in tune with complete the sentence.
They're in touch with their natural self, and it's a part of us that is very normal. Shamans have practiced it, and that's why they are considered special. But these times, I feel that we all need to be connected with that natural side in order to really thrive, and that it is not something that we have to necessarily go and live on a mountain, that it is sometimes practice on your own in your own backyard. And that's a lot of what I'm stressing in the book, is to spend time even with your trees out in the back and digging in your garden, and realize that that is a very important part of your day, and that that part that we have considered subtle or hidden has also been defined as difficult to do. And I grew up right here in the Bay Area. I was just an ordinary girl, and this whole side has opened up. I've practiced it. It's basically just focusing on it, and that's what I've done. And now there's another whole side that I can explore and talk about a lot.
And you've developed something called body radar, and you have taught other people how to connect with this. Could you talk about body radar as it relates to the work you do to help people with their environment?
Yes, I suggest to people that we are much bigger than we think we are, and that there is a whole sense of being aware of what's in front of you, behind you, on the side of you, and above you and below. And that when you put those parameters out, or that whole area, or allow yourself to be aware of what's on each side of you. For instance, when you're in a room, you're usually focused right on your task. When I'm asking people to be aware of their body radar, I'm also asking them to be aware of what's way out here that you're not even looking at. And that one of the things that I suggest to people is pay attention to moods when you're walking into a room, or also the senses, the smells, the touches around you. I give people an exercise to read their house, and that is to go for a walk for about 5 or 10 minutes, let go of all your thoughts, and then come back to your front door and walk in and just feel, just be aware of this body radar, and begin to see or experience your house rather than think about it. Mm-hmm. And they usually always find something new up about their house.
Right. I have a question, which everyone watching can relate to. Why do people accumulate clutter?
We all relate to that, don't we?
Yes.
Yes. clutter grows overnight these days. We have so much going on. There's so much intensity. There's so much change. We get so much in the mail. It's inevitable. But it also is something that we need to be aware that we need to keep as much simplicity around us. The stress of our lives is a mirror of a lot of clutter sometimes. It's like we're doing too much. We have too much in our environment that is stimulating us. So it is really good to take time every day to declutter, even if it's for a short amount of time. I suggest everybody create a declutter appointment for themselves. We have appointments all day. I, from my perspective, working with energy and how to deal with stress, is to create a declutter appointment early in the day, even for 15 minutes, because it will definitely change things for you.
Tell me how I should go about this.
Okay. You first of all, you make an agreement with yourself that you early in the day will figure out for 15 minutes, and that's all. It's very important to start with just a short amount of time, because you don't want this to sound like work or feel like work. This is an important appointment, just like going to the doctor or going to have a haircut. This is an appointment for you. And you start with very simple things, like you don't want to go into your closet that has piles and piles and piles of stuff, because you'll get overwhelmed. You want to start with a drawer, a very small drawer that you can rearrange, or even just sweeping the floor, or making sure the kitchen sink is clean before you go. And you'll get clutter points, okay? Once you start this as a regular rhythm, like a daily, you will begin to see that clutter will not accumulate as fast. There's some kind of new Peter principle of clutter that it allows it to not create so much overwhelm, and you'll feel better.
Do you find that people actually need clutter, like they need bad relationships? I mean, are they related? Could that be? I mean, now I have to have this neurotic relationship because I'm neurotic.
I think it's more that we get overwhelmed with our lives. I don't think people directly think about it. I think it's because they get overwhelmed. And we also feel at the effect of the change and the stress around us. And what you're doing with clutter, and I especially suggest to people that they talk to their clutter and have a sense of, I am in control here. I can begin to rebalance myself. And even though it's just a little teeny bit of change, there is a ripple effect that can go out, especially if you feel inside, or if you put out the thought that you really want to create a sense of change in your life and ground a new way.
Toward the end of your book, you talk about how people can attune to nature, and there are things you can do to do this. Could you talk to us briefly about how can we attune to nature? Or what if we live in an apartment and we just have a deck? How can we help the environment by attuning to it?
It's like seeing nature as a good friend. You want to spend time with your friends. And so sitting out on your deck, consider nature is communicating or wanting to talk to you all the time as a friend or as a partner, as I also suggest. And so the first thing to do is just to go out and sit on your chair and be aware of just the breeze around you or a tree. And it's nice if you can have a plant out there. That's always good too. And close your eyes. And the closing the eyes kind of lets you let go of all your thoughts and all the to-do lists, because we have such a busy mind. The mind wants to come in and say, oh, maybe you don't have time to do this. So the first thing is to close your eyes and to use your imagination, that special part, and just imagine that you are connecting with the earth spirit, is one of the ways I describe it, as a way of the atmosphere around you. The Hawaiians talk about watching the atmosphere and asking from signals or signs or just experiences with the wind. You might notice the wind changes a little bit, and it kind of just gently surrounds you. In Hawaii, when it rains very softly, those misty rains that Hawaii has, but we all have them, what they're suggesting is that the mist is a embrace from nature, especially the short-lived ones. And there's it's a welcoming from nature. And in Hawaii, there are 250 meanings for rain, and each one has a significance. So the mist is oh, thank you for coming, just being here. And it is a way, when you are asking to connect to nature, that will be a way that you can really know it's happening.
As everyone knows, the Earth is in crisis right now with the greenhouse effect, and maybe nature wants something from us. Do you suppose now that we're finally beginning to catch on that nature can't continually replenish itself, it really needs something from us now?
Absolutely, and it's mostly relationship rather than what to do. I mean, it's important to begin to work with our built environment, because the AIA just had a webcast that was out suggesting that 48% of the greenhouse gases come from our built environment. So what we do in our built environment will really make an impact, making sure we're recycling, those kinds of things. But as I said, this earth is also a friend, and there is a sense of really feeling the sense of wanting to help a friend, just like we would help our family or help our friend. We need to also be aware of connecting our heart with nature, because that is what's going to propel us to really change, to really feel an empathic connection again with the earth. We all, in a way, did as kids, sitting under a tree. I wonder how many of us climbed trees. When I ask about that, most kids always climbed in a tree and had a sense.
Okay. Anne-Marie, our time is just about up.
Okay.
I'd like to thank you so much for showing us how to attune to nature, how to attune to ourselves, how to attune to joy. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been very nice. Thanks, Mel.
Okay, and good luck with the book and your life and what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.